I'm going to tell you today about 3 different family snapshots. The first one I call Living the American Dream. The family just bought a $250,000 house. It's beautiful. They have decorated it just to suit them. It's a husband and wife and 2 kids. The wife is a stay-at-home mom and takes the kids to soccer practice and softball and just enjoys living in her community. The husband has his own business and they're successful. They have nice cars in the garage. And then, like I said, it's living the American dream. The outside has a rose garden and the family appears very happy. The second snapshot I call Barely Hanging On. This family lives in a dilapidated rental home and they are just barely hanging on. They can barely make the rent. The husband started doing drugs, not so recreationally anymore. The wife is working full time, and they just barely making ends meet. The kids are doing good in school, but they don't do much else because there just isn't any money. Now, the third snapshot I call Living with a Purpose. Now, this family is very involved in their church. In fact, the husband is the pastor of the church. They entertain a lot, having the church people over. The wife works a good job. She walks her dog every day. The husband is involved as the pastor, and he works out at the gym, and they don't care really where they live. They do have a nice home, but they don't care because they are living just for Christ. Now, those 3 snapshots really don't mean anything to you, and there's a million of those across the nation. What is surprising is that is my story, and it's taken of the same family several years apart. We did have a beautiful home, and we were living the American dream. And I don't know how it slid so fast into the second picture where we barely had anything, and my husband was addicted to methamphetamines. But it did. But then it's the next part of the story, what God did by bringing back that marriage together and putting God in the center of it. I like to think of it as we got married and we just started, building our lives together. And we started with the foundation of marriage. And then, we built side by side our marriage. We had our first kid. We bought our first house. Then we moved to another state, and still we were getting along pretty well. Had our squabbles and everything, but we worked it out, and had another child. And life goes on, and you buy another house, and we're still just living. We did go to church some, but I was quite involved, but my husband wasn't quite as involved. He went mostly because we wanted him to, and we had this tower of trust between us, and we had this marriage. Now, for me, my trust started eroding 1 block at a time when I didn't know what was going on, but Carl didn't come home until really late a lot. He was working, wouldn't answer his pager. He started missing the events that the kids were doing, not showing up. Once was gone all night. And I had to go back to work after we'd had that lovely home and where I was a stay-at-home mom. We just couldn't make ends meet, and I went back to work. But as my trust eroded, it was because he was on drugs, but I didn't find out for a long time. I remember the day I found the cut-off straw in his shirt pocket. I thought he was doing cocaine. I'd never even heard of crystal meth, but I know a lot about it now. But my trust had eroded, and I was just getting angrier and more frustrated, and I just really hated life. And when I was working that night, he didn't come home. A co-worker saw I was upset. He was a male, and he listened, and that started an affair for me. First, just an emotional attachment, and then, went into full-blown affair. For Carl, he thought I always had his back, even though I was yelling at him all the time and everything. He still thought I was, but when he found out about my affair, boom, his tower was down. And the marriage was just about over. In fact, everybody said it was. Even the pastor, the church where I went, said our marriage was over. But I didn't believe that because I said there is always hope with God. Well, it ended up my husband went to my parents' house. Carl went and stayed there for 3 weeks. And while he was there, he met Jesus Christ. So when he came back, of course, our marriage wasn't good yet. But we started with the God block because now we were both Christians and both focused. And so now we started rebuilding our life. But at the center of everything we did was studying Christ and the Bible together. And we started getting involved in a local church. But again, with God between each layer. Now, did it happen all overnight? No, of course not. And we had a lot to relearn. We did really still like each other, so that was helpful. But still, it was God, only God, who between each layer of our building up, it was just so important that God was there. So even if your marriage is in trouble today, or maybe you don't even know what a good biblical marriage could be, I want you to know that it takes God to be in the mix, and this tower really can't be broken down. And how between each layer, we must each be working together, but having God in our mix. And that's my testimony, that going from husband addicted to methamphetamines, I having an affair, and the marriage just about over, how God put it back together, and how today he's the pastor of a church, and we are doing God's work together.